The Sonora Pass not only was an important passageway for westward immigrants streaming into California in the 1850s, it also has a significant connection to Hollywood history. We'll tell you all about it on this episode of History Hunters. On our way up the steep Sonora Pass, we stopped to take a look at a display that caught our eye on the side of Highway 108. It talks about this woman, Nancy Kelsey, who was the first pioneer to come to California through this rugged area. She was 18 when she left Missouri in 1841. She's quoted as saying, "We had a difficult time to find our way down the mountain, having killed and eaten all of our cattle. We were now without provisions for 2 days and lived on roasted acorns and walked barefoot till my feet blistered. My husband came near losing his life with cramps." And this map here shows how the Bidwell-Bartleson party of 1841 came over this pass right through here, up from the Walker River, over the Sierras, and to Sonora. This is the scenery above us. It's pretty intense terrain. In fact, a car just came down the hill, and I could smell the brakes overheating. So we're on our way to the filming location. This entire area was used by the film crew and the cast of For Whom the Bell Tolls. This was pretty rough terrain to shoot a movie in, so the actors had to be physically fit and able to scramble up and down the rocky areas here. I'm at 9,600 feet on the Sonora Pass, and I'm here to talk about the 1943 classic film For Whom the Bell Tolls, featuring Gary Cooper and Ingrid Bergman. Classic film was shot right here. This is supposed to take place in Spain, but it was shot here east of Sonora, California. The film crew was up here for a couple of months. I believe it was June. They encountered some terrific weather up here, even though it was summertime. They were freezing cold at times. This scenery is the scenery that you see in the movie. There's some unique formations of rock here that you'll see throughout the film. It was released in 1943. Made Ingrid Bergman a star. Now, in the background of this scene, you will see that mountain in the background. At the time that the film crew was here, these hills were still covered in snow. Gary Cooper was no stranger to this area. He shot at least 6 films in this area. Down the hill at Kennedy Meadows, he shot Fighting Caravans.
Gosh, do we have to go up them?
Yep. The scouts say there's a pass over there where we can get through.
Well, if there is one, it's a laying up yonder in that saddle, Summers.
Yes, and there's liable to be a lot of deep snowdrifts on the other side.
It sure looks like mighty ticklish going.
Yahoo!
He also shot High Noon down in the Jamestown area west of Sonora. So he was very familiar with this place. In fact, there's a little place called the Confidence Inn. It was a bar. They would say that when he left here from the Fighting Caravans over at Kennedy Meadows, and he wouldn't make it back to Sonora for quite a while because he'd stop and drink. There we go. Here comes a lonely car up the lonely highway. It's a beautiful place. The Sonora Pass was one of the immigrant paths into California back in the 1840s and 1850s. The first documented immigrant traverse of this pass seems to have been late summer 1852 by a wagon train known as the Clark Skidmore Company. Originally, this was known as the Sonora and Mono Toll Road, so you had to pay to travel across this. And this is approximately the location where the film crew with Gary Cooper had spent some time. Well, I'm trying to find a specific rock where Gary Cooper had shot a scene, and where he's got a weapon propped up against a rock with those hills in the background. I'm pretty sure I'm not going to be able to find it, but I'm going to show you kind of what I'm looking at. It would have been a shot like right here, where Gary Cooper and Ingrid Bergman were posing for this shot. That mountain in the background figures prominently in the movie. When they released For Whom the Bell Tolls in 1943, it became the second grossing film of the year and grossed $6.3 million. That was a pretty big film at the time. At the time that Gary Cooper was here, he was 41 years old, and he was already a huge star. His co-star, Ingrid Bergman, was 14 years younger than him. So in a nutshell, the movie is based on the Ernest Hemingway novel. Gary Cooper was playing an idealistic American named Robert Jordan, who joins guerrilla forces in Spain that are opposing dictator Francisco Franco. Jordan is given a dangerous task. He has to blow up a bridge that lies behind enemy lines, and he's sidetracked by a beautiful Spanish girl, Maria, played by a Swedish actress named Ingrid Bergman. Go figure. As his love for Maria grows, he begins to question his assignment, the politics involved, and his place of this foreign war. Vera Zorina was originally given the role and even had to cut her hair very short before coming up here to Sonora to shoot scenes. She was up here 2 or 3 weeks into the shooting when she was cut from the film. It seems that Hemingway and Gary Cooper, his good friend, and director Sam Wood all wanted Bergman to play the role, so Paramount Studios used a flimsy excuse, said that she did not photograph correctly in Technicolor, which was probably a huge crock. When she threatened to sue, she settled on some amount with the studio. When Hemingway told Bergman that she would have to cut off her hair for the role of Maria, she shot back, "To get that part, I'd cut my head off." Those of you who have traveled Sonora Pass will recognize this. We're almost at the top. A spectacular view. There's a creek down there. I was telling Sarah earlier that it must have been torture to come here in the 1850s over some of these mountain passes without the benefit of having land cleared. Must have been a bitch. Who knows, maybe this log was here at the time Gary Cooper was here. Couldn't tell. Gary Cooper is one of my favorite Hollywood actors, Western actors anyway. Whoa. There's a danger coming here. Filming this movie was a fairly large production. We had over 300 people who were housed in some of the camps at Baker's Station in the Dardanelles, Douglas Station, and Kennedy Meadows. A vast array of actors from about 10 different countries were hired, even though most of them were Americans. They also employed about 100 locals as extras, and they served as Spanish soldiers and the guerrillas. $2 million is what it cost to produce the movie, which was a lot of money back in 1942. As I said earlier, because of the rough and sloped terrain, the players and the crew had to be physically fit in order to get in place. They also had to bring in tanks, trucks, cannons, motorcycles, and machine guns for some of the scenes. One of the most thrilling shots involved a blazing army tank, which fell over a steep cliff, so they had rangers and tankers in place in case there was a brush fire that caught. Can't imagine a film crew being able to pull that off today with all the environmental regulations, but then again, we have computers to create realistic scenes like that. Filming had to be suspended for several days because Gary Cooper had some kind of medical issue and had to undergo a minor operation. That gave them the opportunity to have a crew of about 25 laborers to build a cave set using plastic materials, believe it or not, to look like rock, in Blue Canyon, which is near the summit up that way, and a sawmill set in the Clark's Fork area, which incidentally was one of the main immigrant routes that was later abandoned. Several days of filming here involved the use of actual Army bombers that flew in from Reno. Can you imagine how those bombers must have sounded over this otherwise quiet landscape? I could be mistaken, but my understanding is that the actual bridge used in the movie was over the main fork of the Stanislaus River along Clark's Fork Road west of here at a lower elevation. A lot of the bridge scenery was actually faked visual effects involving a matte painting on a pane of glass. It's easy to really wind up your car coming up this hill, 9,600 feet to the top. So I found something interesting. Here's a old Pennzoil can. I don't know how far back that goes, but it's all metal, and apparently it's been here a long time. All I remember is the cardboard ones. So if any of you old timers know how long ago maybe this was sold and thrown on the side of the road here, leave a comment below and we'll figure it out. Yeah, that can has been here a long time. So we made a quick pit stop here in Confidence. It's a little village in the Sierra Nevada. 50 people live here. And I wanted to stop here and tell you a little bit about why Gary Cooper was always late getting back to Sonora. He actually stopped here. This was his favorite watering hole. The Confidence Inn was located here. And it was said when he was up filming that he would always stop here on the way back down to Sonora to get his drink. And he would always show up at the Sonora Inn too late. And they would always wonder about where he was. The building caught fire a couple of years ago, and there's nothing here but the foundation. Gary Cooper's favorite watering hole in Sonora. So from the top of this gorgeous Sonora Pass, I want to thank you for joining us on this episode of History Hunters. We'd always appreciate a comment and a like. And also subscribe to our channel, hit the notification bell so you don't miss any of our future episodes. Hollywood history shot right here. What a beautiful day.